Let's talk JMMA with Charlie Jewett from sogo-kaku.com. This is a podcast about the deep end of Japanese combat sports scene. I'm your host, Shu Hirata from On the Road Management. Now, let's begin. Good morning. Oh, good evening.
Good evening, yeah. How are you?
Good. How are you? I'm actually sitting in front of my bookshelf because I hurt my back.
Oh, wow. Sorry to hear that.
On the chair. Anyway, so I'm pretty sure you were watching RIZIN 29 Osaka show?
I was. I hear that this stream got cut off for the people outside of Japan.
Oh, yeah. Well, in America, at the end of the pay-per-view, it got cut off after the first round. So we didn't get to see the second and third round of Koji versus Shiratori.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
One of the more exciting fights.
Exactly, but I didn't feel like I don't think I'm going to call the pay-per-view company and ask for a refund or any of that. I only missed a little bit. Now, let me give you an update on my client, Kuramoto, who happened to, he came up short against Mr. Aran Yamaniha. I just got the word on his right eye from the punches he took in the first round. He was diagnosed, he has orbital fracture.
Okay.
So he barely could see anything from his right eye on the second and third round.
That was a crazy fight because considering the damage he took in the first round, he did really well in the second and the third round.
Yes.
And I thought he got really close. Like if that first round, if he hadn't gotten caught like that, I feel like he just would have steamrolled him in the second and third round. But especially when he started doing all those the head stomps and everything near the end of the third round.
Right. But here's what it is, though. He did the head stomps and stuff like that in the third round, but he was grabbing the rope, so he didn't look good, right?
Well, it turns out they're really selective on who they care about grabbing the ropes of somebody.
yeah, exactly, right. But still, I think personally, even though I'm his management from the first round, that he took too much shots to the head. It just did not look good, right?
Yeah, for those that aren't familiar, I feel like there's this assumption that Yamaniha is this master grappler. Mm-hmm. And I had to he's a brawler, he's a striker. That's what he's always been like in his Pancrase days.
Right.
And, don't confuse him with his teammates. He's much more of a striker. So
yes.
Yeah, taking those punches wasn't good, but I thought he showed a lot of heart and toughness pushing through all the way to the end and almost winning the fight.
Almost, right. And I think it was maybe fight of the night, because there wasn't too many exciting fights.
I think this or the Kentaro fight were the two most exciting fights on the card.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what did you think about the Yamaniha's performance? We all knew that he's not like a Krebe or Satoshi who finished the guy with the triangle or anything like that. He's more of a brawler, like to strike.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because for those that aren't familiar, I think RIZIN has a lot of casual fans that don't watch some of the smaller promotions. Mm-hmm. So they'd be unfamiliar that he's more of a striker from his Pancrase days and those fights. And so I think they're kind of surprised. Like when people I was watching it with, when they went to the ground, they thought it'd be over almost immediately. Where I think Yamaniha has significantly more knockouts than submission finishes. Like he's obviously trains with very talented jiu-jitsu guys, but he's not like clever or Souza where he's going to finish you immediately. But I thought it made for a very exciting fight. And I still don't think that he's going to be one of the top seeds to win the tournament based off the performance and everything.
Right. And others,
because he got hit a lot. I mean, he did a lot of damage to Kuramoto, but Kuramoto hit him really hard a couple times too.
Right.
The punch before he really hurt Kuramoto, I think Kuramoto really hurt him.
Yes, he did land it, that right hand and stuff like that. Right. But I think, I have to talk to Mr. Kuramoto about this, but I think he needs to sharpen his striking skill because his striking is kind of predictable. Mm-hmm. He's got the left jab, big swinging right, and as long as you avoid that right hand, that's when the Yamaniha stepped into, with a good straight hand. So
I think the Japanese commentator even started mentioning that, how it's like he's throwing way too many spinning back fists in a row, and he's just really predictable with his strikes. Mm-hmm.
Who was the commentary? TK? Or?
It was TK, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Huh. I know. Just off the track, my nephew goes to TK's wrestling school, so just so you know. Anyway, yeah. So other than this fight, which fight stands out the most for you from this RIZIN 29?
Well, the event overall was kind of like this, had this impossible task of living up to RIZIN 28.
Yeah.
Where RIZIN 28 was like all of the superstars of RIZIN.
Right.
Then 2 weeks later, like a very short time period later, they had this event. And I would say that my favorite fights to watch on the event outside of the kickboxing would be the Imanari fight, the Kuramoto fight, and the Kintaro fight.
Now let's talk about Imanari and Takizawa fight. Do you think that was a right call in terms of decision?
I think so. I think it was. I mean, I thought it was kind of a frustrating fight because Takizawa was. I mean, I joked on Twitter. It was like literally watching a man run for his life for 3 rounds. Like he was absolutely terrified to let Imanari touch his legs. And my one thing that was kind of weird, I think Kawajiri actually tweeted about it, was when Imanari actually got a decent grab on his leg, Takizawa like ran into the dive to the ropes, grabbed the ropes in the ring, and like did everything he could to pull himself out of it. And it wasn't even a yellow card, wasn't a red card. And Beinoa gets like a red card for doing some rope stuff, but this guy gets absolutely nothing, not even a warning, for essentially just trying to dive out of the ring to get out of the heel.
Yeah, I have to agree with Kawajiri on that because grabbing ropes and actually diving outside the ring is actually illegal. He could actually get a DQ right there, you know?
Which has happened in the past. But I thought it was funny because after the event on the Japanese live stream, so many people were making comments about Imanari. And my wife and her friends, they aren't familiar with Imanari, and they thought the fight was absolutely hilarious. They were laughing the entire time. They're like, "Who is this creepy guy that keeps running at Takizawa with his hands down?" And
what a great character, right? I wish we saw Imanari in UFC. You know,
right? And the crowd, it sounded like the crowd was into it too, and they were actually booing Takizawa. You hear them? Normally a very quiet Japanese crowd was booing him afterwards, and he just kind of turned the mic away and left the ring.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's hard for to blame Takizawa though because he wants to advance in this tournament, so he wants to take less risk as possible, right? When he fights.
I mean, you can't blame him at all. It's like it's kind of like, for those that aren't familiar, like fighting Paul Harris back in the day. It's just don't even let him touch your legs.
Right. But I think I don't know the real judging criteria on the RIZIN, but they could have given him a warning for maybe being timid or stalling. Or I
think I think Wado was kind of frustrated with the. But to me, I would have actually placed more of the blame on Takizawa because it looked like Imanari was running forward. Like he even had that part where he was literally running at him, throwing punches.
Right.
Takizawa was just so terrified of a heel hook.
Exactly. So I would have given a yellow card to Takizawa.
He was like pretty much just running away the entire fight. And the punches and kicks he was landing is because Imanari was just recklessly running at him.
Exactly. Because, we just talked about it because I've seen some fights under the unified rules that one guy was butt scooting all the time and asking the other guy to come to the ground. And referee just called it DQ right on the spot. So the guy didn't engage in a fight. That's why they called it as a timid and they call it a DQ. So in that sense, Takizawa didn't engage in a fight, right?
Right. But I also thought, I mean, Imanari's 46 years old. I thought if Takizawa had just tried to land a combo, he probably could have finished it.
Probably, yeah.
And I mean, there were times where Imanari was like, I know he was doing that thing where he flops to the ground, but I think he was actually taking damage from some of the punches too.
Right.
I feel like if there was any committed offense from Takizawa, he might have been able to finish it.
That's true. Now, what do you think about the Kintaro against Kuya Ito?
Awesome fight. It was great. I mean, what do you expect? I mean, Kintaro is incredibly explosive. I mean, he's not a world beater. He's not going to like go to the UFC and become a world champion, but he's got a lot of fans. People like him. They like his story, and it's a super exciting fight. And at an event where none of the MMA fights went to anything besides a decision. There's no finishes on this card. It was probably this and the Kuramoto fight were probably the most exciting in that regard.
Okay.
Because he was so explosive. And people were kind of sleeping on Ito because of Ito's record. But if you just look a little closer at Ito's record, he's got a bunch of losses, but they're all at the very beginning of his career. He's actually on a pretty hot streak going into this.
Yes. And he's a karate-based fighter, but he has a pretty good solid wrestling from Miyata's team. So I thought he was going to go mix around more of the takedowns and the punches and go more closer into the Kintaro. But I thought he kind of stayed away, fought in Kintaro's range.
Yeah.
Instead, that was the problem. And Kintaro ended up taking him down earlier than he did,
Oh, yeah. And I definitely thought, like, these are two young fighters. They're just eating massive shots because they were hitting each other so hard.
I don't know why Ito just engaged in a striking battle.
Yeah.
Again, should have, could have, would have, but he should have mixed it up.
The silver lining, though, is I think he made a really good impression. And I think people had no idea who he was going into this, and now they're very aware of who he is. And he'll probably get another shot at RIZIN in the future.
So I think RIZIN will like a fighter like that. He'll get another shot somewhere, Something might get injured anyway, too, Now, so so let's recap RIZIN 28, and we can go through the 8 guys who advanced to the second round. Now, when we talk about RIZIN 28, I think it seems like all the fans are only talking about 2 guys, which is Kaya Sakura and Naoki Inoue. Do you think that's fair to say that?
Yeah, because, they were just such dynamic, explosive finishes compared to the other fights. I think Ogikubo, he broke his hand, I think.
He did break his hand, but I heard that he will make it to the September.
Right, but just because he broke his hand, it was kind of like a lackluster fight where he kind of had to lean on his wrestling to win it.
Yeah, and he played it safe. He had to, right.
And Motoya was also just kind of not as super as exciting. So he kind of had these 2 kind of slower fights and then just 2 first-round explosive finishes. So naturally, everyone's talking about Kai and Naoki.
Now, out of the 8 second round 8 guys who won the first round, RIZIN hasn't told us if it's going to be a drawing or if they're going to do a matchmaking on their own, or are they going to take the voting from the fans to decide the matchmaking, blah, blah, blah. Now, if you're in Sakakibara-san's shoes, what will you do?
I try to load it to a way that tournaments are always hard because you never know who's going to win these fights. But I would try to make it so that you put Kai and Naoki on opposite sides of the bracket and try to make that the final match if they win their fights. And I kind of like your suggestion of Kai versus Kentaro, because that's going to be a nice little striking affair.
Exactly. It seems like because that's the matchmake that so-called outsider fans want it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Outsider that both came from,
I don't know, put like Takezawa versus Motoya, because
that would work.
Yeah, then put Ogikubo versus Naoki.
Naoki, because I think that's what the hardcore fans wants to see, right? Because they kind of want to win, And Takezawa, Motoya, and we got the Yamaniha.
Oh yes, Yamaniha and Otsuka. There's several fighters, like Yamaniha versus Otsuka might be fun, actually, because maybe like a passing of the... Yamaniha's not young. He looks much younger than he actually is. I keep forgetting that Yamaniha's like in his 30s.
He's like 34 or 5, right?
He's much older than he looks. But, put him against Otsuka. They probably fought each other, actually. I think Otsuka's fought a ton of people in the tournament. But it's just... I think there's some fighters that doesn't really matter what you do with them. But I think Ogikubo, you want to make sure to get interest. I think you need to put Naoki versus Ogikubo, and then Kai versus Kentaro, because with the tournament that guarantees 2 good fights that people will be into, and then you hope that those people make it to the finals, because those are obviously the most popular fighters and would get the best ratings for Fuji TV.
Right. I heard that Fuji TV is doing the September 19th live broadcast.
Okay.
Osaka show, there's no live broadcast. Right? It's tape delayed broadcast.
I heard that it wasn't even a tape delay. Did you?
Oh, it's not even tape delayed. Okay, so right. So it's a big difference. So I think RIZIN wants to come back with a strong card on September, which will attract viewers.
I kind of felt like, let me know what you think. I kind of felt like RIZIN 29 was kind of like a thing that RIZIN had to do to get to RIZIN 30, where they had to get this event before the Olympics, and they had Koji, so they could sell out the Osaka area, and they could also get like some of the less sexy tournament fights done with, and so that they could start putting the more exciting fights together in September. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. And also actually hearing that I think that Sakura sort of mentioned that he may put one more show in August too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but I heard it may be a little bit smaller show in August. So September is the show that they really have to load with a good card because for RIZIN, getting a good TV rating on Fuji television is very, very important.
Right, and they already announced that Satoshi and Hamasaki are going to be on the September card.
Right.
And I will mention, I like Hamasaki and I like Souza, but they aren't big Fuji TV draws.
No, they're not.
And so if it's going to be on Fuji TV, you got to think Kai has to be on it. Mikuru or Kai, one of those two has to be on it. Tenshin isn't going to be on it.
Well, Kai is guaranteed to be on it. He's a bantamweight Grand Prix, right? So right there. So see, I have a feeling if the Mikuru is not on it, then it may make sense to put a Kai against Kintaro and Naoki against Ogiko. That could be a pretty good double main event.
Right, and Tenshin's not going to be on it. I think he said his next fight with RIZIN would be in the New Year's Eve show.
Right.
And so I wouldn't be surprised if Rena is also on it. Fuji TV seems to like her.
You mentioned Rena. I know this will not happen in 99.99% of time. And since I think Hamasaki is going to have a hard time getting an opponent, to tell the truth, somebody who's legit, maybe this is the time they could do Rena versus Hamasaki.
Right. And did Sakakibara say it'll be hard to get a visa because of the Olympics? They're kind of limiting it all for Olympic athletes.
He said, unless you're not Olympic athletes, you won't get a special visa treatment like the Musaev got. So, and more than likely, it's going to be difficult to fly in fighters from the outside the country. So that's going to limit Hamasaki's opponent. Period.
And I think Hamasaki has already said that she would fight Rena. She doesn't care. She has like no qualms about fighting her teammates. So it is a possible fight.
I don't know if that fight makes sense for Rena.
No, I mean. It'd be kind of a weird fight for both of them since they're so close to the end of their careers. But I mean, they need something because, as we said with the last Rising 28, when they're advertising that'll be on Fuji TV, it was clear that we saw old promotional things on trains where Rena was part of that. And so Rena was obviously part of their pitch to Fuji TV, and that fell through. And so I think that you have to put Kai and you have to put her. Maybe you put Shibata if you don't put him on the December card. You got to put something on to get Fuji TV to bite.
Yeah, good thing you just mentioned Shibata, but to me, Shibata, I don't know if I really want to see him again in RIZIN. He's to me like a CM Punk. Once or twice is good enough.
I think he was right. I think Shibata is smart about how he brands himself, and I think it's smart to not overdo him and wear out his welcome. And so I think maybe one or two more appearances, because he's also an older guy. But one or two more just fun things with him might be fun. But
yeah, makes sense.
But I don't think any of them. I mean, the first one was such a crazy experience. So I don't think that any of them will ever be as good as the first one.
Right, exactly. And I think if they're going to book Shibata again, I wish they're going to book him against a more legit fighter. So, like, a chance at least to beat him,
Yeah.
Because I don't want to see another Ben Askren case here, That sucks,
Exactly.
Now, let's talk about this one then. I want to talk about this one first. Kana Watanabe in Bellator. She just fought Liz Carmouche and got demolished in 36 seconds or so?
Right.
Now, what did you think about that fight?
Well, I know that you had mentioned something. I had also had this feeling going into the fight that I think people were kind of writing off Liz Carmouche going into this fight. And I think the thing that the first fight in Bellator showed about Kana Watanabe is her striking defense is not really good. Like she's very stiff, and she gets hit in the head a lot. And I think Liz Carmouche also noticed that. And Liz Carmouche was criticized for not finishing her opponents. And Liz Carmouche kind of negates Kana Watanabe's physical advantages because Liz Carmouche is also very strong. And Liz Carmouche just decided, well, this girl gets hit really easy. I'm just going to run at her immediately and try to hit her in the face as hard as I can right away and see what happens. And it worked out for her.
Right, because I thought Kana has the typical bad habit that judoka has, which is when he get hit on the head, instead of going side to side, they tend to go straight backward. So end up being target practice, and that's what exactly happened there.
I mean, it reminded me of like Ronda Rousey, like just very stiff, zero head movement, and just move kind of straight backwards.
You know, judo players are usually good at side movement, right? Using footwork and stuff like that. So for a moment, I don't know if you remember this fight. The first person who threw a punch was Kana. I think Kana wanted to throw a couple of punches to start feeling comfortable. I felt immediately that's a bad sign. You know,
Yeah.
go and stand punch, because when she gets hit, she'll go straight back forward, which that's what happened. And he just got a couple of punches, you know?
Most of the people in Japan that are like, let's look at like some other high-level judo, like Ayaka Hamasaki or Miki Motono, people like that, they realize that they have like a striking deficiency, and they all go to like private boxing classes, like private kickboxing instructors, because people may not be familiar, but Japan actually has a pretty good boxing history, and they have very good boxers. So I mean, you can go find a very talented boxing.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. And, you know, let me tell you this funny story. It's a good thing you mentioned Hamasaki there. Of course, Hamasaki is a judoka, and she knew she had to learn, you know, striking. I'll tell you this on the record because a long time ago. Back then, her master Abe was into this different karate. I don't know if you remember that Amoeba was fighting with her hands down, and the master was putting hands down, you know, like he was into that karate style. So he tried to convince Hamasaki to do the same. But Hamasaki came to me like, should I listen to him on that? I'm scared to pose like that. I'm like, no, just go with your instinct. Do you like boxing better? She's like, yeah, I like boxing better. Go boxing. You know?
What was that? It reminds me, wasn't there like that famous Japanese fighter in the UFC who tried to punch his opponent's punches as they were coming in?
Yeah, something.
And he just ended up getting lit up. But yes, I mean, Ayaka Hamasaki has a very high-level boxing coach. I think it was also Megumi Fuji's boxing coach.
Exactly. So she should seek for the more better striking coach. And you know, Kana Watanabe, she's 125, female in Japan. It's very difficult to find a suitable training partner too, because there's not many fighters at that weight class.
Well, I know she's really busy with her pro wrestling now, but I know Kana Watanabe is friends with Shuri Kondo, who was a high-level kickboxer who also fought in the UFC.
Right.
And I'm like, maybe you could call your friend and like, can you, Ueda-san's not teaching me how to move my head and punch correctly. I need to find a better boxing coach.
Ueda-san. Ueda-san is her coach right now, and he's always like a talk in the Japanese MMA community because he's always with Kana everywhere she goes. And
he's also got like the
skills and everything else, you know.
Well, he's also got like the misfortune of being incredibly outspoken, and so he kind of rants about things on Twitter, and it gets him in trouble because I think Japan's more conservative naturally as a culture, so they don't like a guy that's like talking a bunch of shit on Twitter about stuff. But
and
he's always around.
Do you know about this? Her coach Ueda-san had a little bit of a problem with the Zest organization, where some of the fighters had a trouble selling tickets. They couldn't come up with the tickets they were supposed to sell. And Ueda-san sent a long line, sort of like it could be considered almost like a power harassment, telling the fighters, how much do you think you're worth? Kind of stuff.
So, the message, I've seen the message. It was like a thesis statement. It was a very, very long text message.
It was a very long one. Yeah, I saw that too.
And then I think he was also criticized for, what was it? Oh, he was also criticizing people calling themselves YouTubers. He was like trying to act like he has some successful YouTube channel. And he was like, if you don't have this many followers, don't call yourself a YouTuber. And his YouTube channel just is almost only popular because Kana's on it.
Right. And also recently, I think he's also again criticized for using a megaphone in the corner, man.
That was really weird. The RIZIN thing, I understand using the megaphone when you're outside the ring and the fighter's fighting, but he was using it when he came inside too. Like he was like a foot away from Motoya, speaking to him through him with a megaphone. Like, this is very weird.
Megaphones are not allowed to unify the rules.
Well, it's Japan.
Right.
The crowd isn't loud.
Exactly. The funny thing is, let me tell you this story that once, I think one of the very few cornerman / manager experienced this, that one of my fellow cornerman wanted to bring a megaphone. Of course, the inspector said, no, you're not allowed to use it, right? Instead, now, during the fight, my fellow cornerman, without using megaphone, he was yelling the instruction during the fight, of course, like every other cornerman. We were in the Pearl Theater, which is like a small venue, and the commission guy's table was right next to our corner. And my cornerman was yelling, and one of the commissioners felt that his voice was too loud, so he started yelling at us and said, "You better lower your voice" and stuff like that. You know?
Yeah. That's the guy going on a power trip right there. But it was weird. But it was definitely weird to see him. I was wondering if he was going to take that to the U.S. I didn't know that was against the rules, but it's weird because the Japanese crowd's quiet. I don't know why you need a megaphone.
Exactly, but then again, I think Mr. Hori, Asakura's lawyer / cornerman, also responded to that. I think he didn't know that megaphones are illegal in the States or under the unified rules, but he also says like, well, next fight, I'll make sure I'll bring a megaphone with me too.
Well, that's a weird thing too, because I mean, there's the whole credits. People are actually criticizing the fact that Mikuru's cornerman is him. It's like people were saying like, why is Mikuru's cornerman two people that are completely unqualified to give him fight advice?
Yeah, that's true though. I mean, especially I think one of the guy who was holding a pads or Mikuru's current manager, I think, right?
Yeah, because last fight was different. Last fight was Hori-san and Kai, but normally his cornermen are Hori-san and like his manager or a YouTube guy. It's kind of like when like Mike Tyson fought Buster Douglas. It's like these cornermen don't know anything about boxing. Like they can't give you any advice or strategy.
Yeah, you know, that happened to our clients a couple of times. I won't name names, but sometimes fighters, they believe in coach who is not maybe exactly right to bring it when you're for the fight, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, like let's say if you're in love with the strengths and conditioning coach, sure, you can bring it, but he's not the striking coach. He's not the like grappling coach. So you need something like that. So I had that one experience. My fighter says, "Oh, that's fine. I'm bringing this coach," which is not that so-called combat sports coach. So I actually arranged Jukaon and the other guy, my friends, to work with him during the week and end up cornering, you know, because I felt it's just not right, you know.
Well, I can understand like having like one person in your corner that's like an emotional support kind of person.
Because, for example, I know like guy like Dan Hornbuckle who always bring his wife. He wants his wife to be on the corner. That's fine. Well, the other guy to be with his wife, you know.
Mm-hmm. But I think you need at least one person in the corner who knows what they're talking about.
Definitely, definitely. Because this is what I think. Even though you have a thoroughbred, you always put a best jockey on that horse, right? Because you could always get into trouble. Then you need a best jockey to get them out of the trouble too. So that's my theory, you know.
Back to the Kana fight. I think a lot of the Japanese audience on Twitter, at least, was talking about like, oh, like all the Bellator fighters are so strong, or Liz Carmouche is too strong, and I don't think that's necessarily the case. I mean, Liz Carmouche, no discredit, 38 years old,
right?
And her best days are probably significantly behind her in her fight career. But I think that Kana just needs to fix her striking. Like, it's a giant hole in her armor right now, but if she fixes that, she'll be able to go back and do very well.
I think so too, and I really think I will say this publicly: Mr. Ueda should let her go to a better training environment. I mean, when you really love her as a fighter, I think the coach has to realize it's time to let them go to the better environment, you know?
Well, I always liked the Duke Rufus approach where he really wanted Anthony Pettis to get better, so he sent him all across the country. And he wasn't like a jealous coach who was like, go over there, learn what you can, bring it back to this gym too.
Well, good thing you mentioned Duke Rufus. I had a long talk with Duke about one of my clients last week, so we will probably announce about that sometime next week. One of my Japanese clients will go to Duke Rufus' team to train for the next fight.
If only we could guess which one of your clients comes from a kickboxing background and is
exactly the guy who has to be a striker cannot be taken down. You know,
exactly.
Right. But anyway, that's a good team for him to go, I think. But anyway, go back to Kana. I really think she should, you know, because I want to get into the next topic, which is the same. I don't want to say the same case, but I'm talking about Kanako Murata in UFC. She had another
very depressing
for the Japanese fans, you know.
Yes. Been a depressing week for Japanese mixed martial arts fans.
Oh yeah. Now, what do you think about that fight?
I noticed two things. One is, this is just kind of cursory, but Kanako Murata's eye swells a lot.
Yeah.
And a lot of her fights, her eyes almost swell shut. So I think she needs to really work on her striking defense because mean, if her eyes have a propensity to swell like that, she needs to do a better job defending it. And I think I listened to some other articles and podcasts, and her opponent, who I believe is a client of yours, isn't she?
Yes, Janjarova. Yeah.
I think people were talking about her. She was like kind of had a fire lit under her butt after the loss to Mackenzie Dern. And she came out and was very aggressive. And Murata Kanako is a very good strike, I mean, a very good athlete. And I think she's trying to strike. But I think she should stick to her wrestling and give her striking time to catch up. Until, because it just seemed like she was never winning the striking exchanges. And
here's what I thought. I mean, of course, obviously, I knew Janjarova got much bigger than compared to when she fought Mizuki in Invicta, and she had actually a knee injury, so we knew that she couldn't move as much fast as possible as is usual, you know. And for some reason, I don't know why, I tell Mizuki same thing to even Kanako too. A girl like Janjarova, even though her striking doesn't look like a real like seasoned veteran striking skill kind of stuff, but that punch has a power behind it. And she will come at you with the punch, and that's what happened against Mizuki. That's what happened against Kanako. You know, right? They got nailed on the right off the bat.
What is it? What they say about Wilder? It's the mistake eraser. He might be the cleanest striker, but if he hits you with it, he has enough power that it doesn't matter.
Exactly. Now, and this is what actually Mizuki and I were talking about this Kanako Janjarova fight before this fight took place, and we both agreed that there's one advantage, this definite advantage Kanako has over Janjarova was the speed. We thought so she could have utilized that speed, right? And jab, whatever, hit it away and take down, but don't even bother pound. Just get up because you don't want to be in her guard. You don't want to be on Janjarova's setup. You take her down, maybe pound once, twice. Even though if it doesn't land, that's fine because it leaves a good impression on judges. And get up, kind of.
Well, I mean, she's very quick.
Yes,
she's very athletic. I mean, the thing Kana and Kanako are both very athletic.
Yes.
But I think the thing that Kanako is going to struggle with that Kana doesn't is that Kanako is short. And so she has some physical stuff she has to overcome. But I just thought that once it became clear that she was kind of losing on the striking exchanges, something else needed to happen. And she had to, I mean, it's kind of, you can't tell what was going to happen in the fight because her elbow got dislocated. She tried to keep going, which the Japanese fans all liked. They all thought she's very tough, very awesome in that regard. But
I know it was a tough decision, and I knew that her arm went out after she threw the first punch on the second round.
Yeah.
But I thought it was very risky for Cornerman to let that go all the way to the end of the second because she could have got knocked out.
Well, it seemed very clear that it was like the doctor that noticed it. The doctor kind of marched into the cage.
Exactly, right.
It was like it's over.
I would just tell the doctor to stop it, or at least to check it. You know what I mean?
Or, I mean, not to say it too many times, but it's kind of reminds me of Duke Rufus when Duke Rufus was cornering Anthony Pettis, and it was like, "Oh, your hand's broken. Okay, we're stopping the fight." Because you got to save your fighter for another day. You don't want him to go in there and take a bunch of shots to the face and never be the same again.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So that's why then when it comes to this argument of do you think she should have tapped on the end of the first round? Just like some people say about the Mikuru against Kureba Koike. Oh, he should have tapped or not tapped.
What's different? I mean,
it is big difference, yes.
I think not tapping to a choke is very different than tapping to a joint lock or like a bone. Because it reminds me, I mean, I would have recommended tapping just because you don't know what kind of permanent damage and injury like that's going to do. I mean, it looks like it's just a dislocated elbow, which is easily fixed, but you don't want to like do anything that, I mean, your elbow is very important, especially when you're a wrestler and with your punches. I wouldn't want to risk that because she's still very young in her career.
Exactly, because you could be out for a long time. If you tap it, and you can always regroup, go back to the drawing board, and fight 3 months later.
I mean, maybe Mizuki needs to give her a call and talk to her about all the surgeries she's had.
Oh, exactly. She would not real quick.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's no sense. But yeah, actually, she noticed that immediately. And she was watching the fight in Aljamain's house, and we're texting, and she noticed that immediately. I think that arm went out. Yeah, I think it's extended already.
In Kanako's defense, I don't think she expected her opponent to be that aggressive that quickly. And she just kind of stormed out of the gate. I mean, it's the same thing. It was like watching two very similar fights where Liz Carmouche just stormed out of the gate and ran right at Watanabe. And that happened right with Murata, too.
Here's what it is, though. I always tell my Japanese clients, the Japanese like to use the word yosumi. Yosumi means is like, let's settle and see what the opponent's going to do first. Like they never want to try to go take over in the beginning.
Yeah, they're kind of surrendering the initiative.
I always say there's only 3 rounds. If you lose the first round, you're going to play the catch-up game, right?
Yeah, plus you're surrendering the initiative. You're just willingly giving the initiative to the other fighter.
Exactly, right. And you don't want to get them on that mode, right? They're on the momentum.
So I'm kind of curious, what do you think about Kanako Murata training at CSA? Do you think that's a good fit for her?
Actually, good thing you mentioned. I heard that she usually gets pretty good training there, but this time when she got to CSA, I heard there's some problem between the couple fighters and coaches, and so I would say half, but a chunk of fighters sort of left or didn't
really?
training kind of stuff. So I don't think she got the training she was expecting to get. Unfortunately,
Because I was just thinking, like,
I do this. I told his coach Yamazaki-san that she needs to get a BJJ black belt training. She needs to do that if you fight Janjarova. I'm not saying that she has to beat her in that ground, but she needs to be able to how to respond against the BJJ black belt. But I don't know if she ever got that training.
Well, it reminds me of I know she lost the fight when Liz Carmouche fought Ronda Rousey. She had black belts arm barring her all day long and just working out getting out of that position. Which
exactly,
if you're fighting a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, I feel like you need to fly in a ADCC when it's a champion and just nonstop just work on getting out of danger.
Yeah, here's what it is. I think I can reveal this right now. Kanako is actually managed by RIZIN. And her contract expired the last March, but I think she extended for 1 year only. So she's still under the contract of RIZIN. RIZIN is her management. But I don't think they sit down and discuss about her training environment. Like actually many other managers in Japan, which is totally different from I do. I love to talk about training environment. I love arranging training environment with my fighters. But so I'm actually already told Mizuki to go ahead and reach out to Kanako and maybe let's think about getting together in Vegas. The reason why I say that is I have a Jessica Andrade and Jessica Del Boni and Carol Rosa moving to Vegas full time. And Marina Rodriguez and Janjarova is also thinking about moving to Vegas almost full time. And we have coaches of Jessica Andrade's team coming together. And we have a good relationship with Extreme Couture and also Robert Drysdale, which is BJJ champion. So we could actually form a pretty good women's fight team right there.
Well, I mean, just when we interviewed Mizuki, I don't know if you're a young up and coming fighter, why wouldn't you want to live in Vegas? You get free training, free food, and if you get injured, there's free doctors and free rehab. Plus, Las Vegas isn't some super expensive town.
No,
you can all get together and rent a house or something.
Exactly, so they can rent a house together, whatever. But, I'll tell you this funny story. I was expecting Jessica to rent a big house, so maybe we could all live there. Jessica's so smart. She only got a 1-bedroom apartment because she doesn't want the other people to sleep on her floor.
Smart. Smart. Well, I mean, plus you got to think, I've always had this theory that one of the reasons Japanese fighters have a hard time with is dealing with jet lag. And just, I don't think a week is enough time to have a very high level athletic competition at the end. And if they're all in Vegas, that's where a majority of the events are. And so they'll be acclimated and fully ready to fight there.
Exactly. That's exactly what you say, because Kanako has zero problem in terms of visa, obviously, because she has the P1 visa from the UFC where she's allowed to stay in states as long as she wants, as long as under the contract to UFC. And she has the UFC PI where she can train. And if you have all these girls I mentioned and the coaches there, the chances are she will get a much better training.
Yeah.
Because at the PI, not only the food or rehab, they also could provide strength and conditioning coach. And all kinds of stuff. So she could take advantage of all these things, which she can never get in Japan.
Plus, Team Couture and Syndicate are both there, and they both have very good histories as women fighters.
Yeah, and then Mizuki goes to Syndicate once in a while to train, And we also, like I said, we have a good relationship with Robert Drysdale. He's opening JMMA, which obviously a BJJ black belt champion, which knows what he's doing, obviously, right? So we could really, do a good team. And I would love to invite Kana Watanabe there too. I would love to. And I would do it for, but I guess it's politically kind of difficult, right?
Well, I mean, I remember in a previous either article or when I spoke to her, I can't remember. She mentioned that she was interested in training in the United States.
Wow.
And I think if you get her in it, Kana Watanabe is this person where training is her life. It's like, what are your hobbies? I like working out. I like training. It's all she likes to do. And I think if once she experiences the training in the U.S. and see how much the different level that it's at, I think she would fall in love with it.
Then she should come, but she should come alone. Don't bring her boyfriend. Really. I mean, that's just the condition. I would tell her, you know?
Just go to Vegas and have base camp with Mizuki, Kanako, and Roxanne Modafferi, where everyone can speak Japanese.
Yeah, we got like Jessica underage and Carol Rosa. Rosa is bantamweight, you know. Jessica is flyweight, and
I was just joking about the ability to speak Japanese because
that
wasn't in English.
But obviously, she needs good striking, right? Training. Yeah. I mean, that's not a bad bunch of group of girls there, you know.
Yeah. And now that she's getting paid by Bellator, I mean, she got 60 in her last fight, and if it was the same contract, she probably got 30 for this fight. So she can afford to go to Vegas for a couple months.
She got 30-30 last fight. She won. They probably got an increase, no?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I'd be surprised.
It's a co-main event.
So that's 35 bucks. So that's 95,000 in 2 fights. Yeah. Minus 30% on tax, whatever that is. That should be good enough money for her to go to the train, right?
Plus, I mean, with that financial motivation too, I wouldn't want to lose my next fight. I'd want to stay in Bellator, and so I'd definitely do the investment and go to the U.S.
Exactly, because now she has to understand winning and losing make a big difference in terms of pay you're making, and it's worth it to like invest maybe $5,000 to get another 35,000 right on your paycheck. So it only makes sense, right? All right, so let's talk about now the deep 101 and that you attended that, right? I mean,
I did. Mm-hmm.
And
it was a long weekend of a bunch of deep cards.
Right. So let's talk about deep 101, which is the male competition, obviously. And the main event was what? Naoki Hirata against Koya Kanda? Was it?
No, I think that was actually the previous day.
Oh, it was previous day. Okay.
The previous day on Saturday, they had like a bunch of like the young up-and-comer fights.
Okay.
And Itsuki Hirata's brother fought on the card, who you're mentioning.
Naoki Hirata against Koya. Right, Koya.
And he lost. He lost that fight. Yeah. And also notably on the famous sisters, brothers, both of Seika Izawa's brothers fought on that day as well, and they both lost as well. But there was also like a really weird heavyweight fight that day where this big guy called Saint knocked out his opponent like in 20 seconds.
Yeah, actually, that boy actually works out with Mr. Maximo Blanco.
Yeah, well, he's a big boy.
Yeah,
he's a big boy.
Yeah.
But no, so Deep 101 had a really weird ending. It was Ryuichi Sumimura versus Nao Yoneda.
Okay.
And it ended with a low blow. I'm sorry, Yoneda got hit with a low blow. One of the most brutal low blows I can remember seeing. It's probably because I was very close in person.
Okay.
And he was unable to continue. He had to be carried out of the cage on a stretcher by one side being carried by Shinya Aoki and the other side being carried by Yushin Okami.
Really?
And it went to a technical decision. And his opponent won the fight because he was ahead on the judges' scorecards when it ended.
Okay, so Yoneda, I think he trains with Okami and everybody else at Gen Sports.
Right, and the other guy trains with Aoki. But it was a very bad low blow. I mean, it's kind of funny because the refs went through the whole rigmarole of being like, we're giving him a time to recover. And he was literally just laying in the middle of the cage, not moving. It looked like a dead corpse in the middle of the cage. I'm like, this guy's not getting back up. This guy looks like he's dead.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. So it was a very kind of anticlimactic ending to the event. I will say that there were some interesting fights on the card because some of Mikuru Asakura's like kohais were on the card.
Yeah, who were they?
Underlings. They all lost, unfortunately.
They all lost. Okay.
The second fight, Hiroya, was one of them, and I forget the other two which they were, but they all lost. And Hiroya is you tell that he's associated with Mikuru because he had a lot of fans there in the crowd. And a lot of female fans were there for Hiroya, screaming for him throughout the fight. It wasn't a blowout. It was a very back and forth fight, and I think he'll definitely be back.
Why is he so popular? Is he on one of those Dreamer reality show, whatever?
I think I may be wrong on this, but I think he might be a result of that Mitsuki, the Mikuru like 1 minute fighting thing.
Oh, breakout, whatever, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's associated with Mikuru, which has the rub on you. If you're associated with him, you must be like Mikuru. So he's probably been on his YouTube channel as well.
Oh, just like Shirakawa.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I guess they're YouTubers in that sense.
Yeah, but it was a back and forth fight. I mean, he has a career ahead of him. It just seems like he's very new.
Now, who else do you think it's worth to talk about here in terms of Deep 101?
Well, I mean, the only other fight that really I think would have broad appeal is King Reno lost.
Oh, yeah. She lost. She made a weight to 137 too.
She more than made weight. She was underweight by 3 pounds. She actually weighed under the limit.
That's amazing.
Her opponent, I think, is Yuko Higashi.
Yeah, judo. And
she's a famous judo guy. And they kind of they promoted the fight as like Pancrase versus Deep. Most of her fights were Pancrase in the past. And it was a weird fight because King Reina, I feel like, had the opportunity to win the fight early on.
Yeah.
And then, but Higashi started really working King Reina to the body. And then the fight just turned into King Reina running forward at Higashi and Higashi just throwing straight punches and nailing her as she came in. And I was kind of surprised the ref didn't stop the fight because you know this as well as I do. When there's a fight in Japan, and especially when women are involved, if there's blood, the ring doctor is very quick to stop it.
Very quick.
And King Reina was bleeding a lot from the mouth, and they did let it go. But because I've seen fights get stopped for nosebleeds, essentially. So, I mean, I was kind of surprised that it kept going. But, I mean, about King Reina, I went to her quote-unquote gym a couple years ago, and she was training at a bar in Shibuya that has a cage in the middle of it.
Yeah,
and the whole gimmick is you can have a drink.
Yeah,
you can come have a drink and watch amateur fights. And all I could think was, like, this is where she trains? Like, because I think the day before I'd gone to AACC to do an interview, and it was just like watching polar opposites. It was just like, I know that King Reina is apparently a difficult person. She's I'll just take a step back. She's famously a nice person, a very friendly person. Yeah. She's also famously a very flaky person, and famously kind of hard to deal with because of how flaky she is. I think if you watch one of the old RIZIN confession videos, the videographer actually complains that they were waiting to like meet her for 3 hours, and she showed up 3 hours late. So I think she's just kind of flaky. So she's had problems with gyms in the past, and her coaches. I think she was actually kicked out of a gym
many times.
And so I think she needs to do something to go to an actual gym and not just train at a bar, essentially.
Yeah, that's true. She really needs a coach, and she really needs the proper training. But she does have something that might, turn out to be a pretty decent,
Yeah, and she's gotten her weight under control. I think she lost like close to 40 pounds, which is huge. But my thinking is she has a close relationship with a bunch of like Miyu Yamamoto and Ursa Yamamoto at Crazy Bee. Why doesn't she just go over to Crazy Bee and start training there? It'd be a better environment than what she's currently doing.
I don't know. Once she even went to States to train, right? You remember? I don't know where she went.
I don't know how much we can talk about that, but yeah.
I know. She didn't do much there, but
She was one of the RIZIN used to send fighters, just for the listeners. RIZIN paid for a couple of fighters to go get some better training, and most notably, they paid Kana Asakura. She went and trained at 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, and then after her was Kanako Murata and things like that RIZIN would send to the U.S. And it wouldn't be an episode if we didn't talk about Nakai Rin. Rin Nakai famously complained that she was not given the opportunity to go to the U.S., to which I responded, "No one's stopping you. You can go train wherever you want."
Right. We can talk about Rin Nakai at the end because I want to bi-weekly Rin Nakai update anyway. So, yeah. I mean, really. So let's talk about this Deep Jaws 33 because it's, I think, one fighter we should talk about.
Deep Jewels 33. Okay. Unlike Rising 29, that had 0 finishes, Deep Jewels 33 kind of went against the norm, had a bunch of finishes, at least as far as a Deep Jewels card goes. Deep Jewels can sometimes not have a lot of finishes, but this did. And I mean, you have the video up right now. Seika Izawa leveled up before this fight. Before this fight, she was a high-level judoka, national tournaments. She was a high-level wrestler, national tournaments, which is kind of a rare combination.
Yeah, she was it was 4th in both wrestling and judo, right? In all of Japan. And very rare, right?
There's several things outside of the fight that I'd like to say. First, she's obviously getting a push by Deep Jewels. She's changed her appearance. She's trying to make herself more presentable. And before the fight, when she was on Instagram, she was actively promoting the event very hard. She actually put a poll up, said, like, are you interested in this event? And if you said you're interested in it, she direct messaged you asking if you wanted to buy a ticket. So she's very serious about her career and trying to promote herself. And you can kind of see it. She had a new costume for this fight. She had some new sponsors. And notably, the way you can tell Deep Jewels likes someone and that they're going to get a push is before a Deep Jewels event starts, they have all the fighters come out to the cage. And one of them gives a pre-event speech thanking all the fans. That's pretty much always a fighter that Deep Jewels is going to be pushing. And Seika Izawa gave the speech for this event. And her fight before this, she had a grappling match against Megumi Sugimoto. I heard her training, preparing for the match, and she never stopped. She was training the entire event, hitting pads and working out. This girl is a bundle of energy. And that comes into play in this fight with Miki Motono, because Miki Motono is also a very high-level, national tournament level judo. She used to train with Watanabe. She used to train with Kana Watanabe in college. They weren't the same age, but Kana Watanabe come back and they trained together. And Seika Izawa blew her out of the water. Seika Izawa reminded me of all of the best parts of Ben Askren when he was younger, and that no matter what position she was in, she was punching, she was kicking, she was elbowing, she was throwing knees. She was always attacking Miki Motono. And I will say the rematch initially was canceled, pushed back, because Miki Motono had an injury. And I couldn't help but notice that Miki Motono's right leg was heavily taped for this match. And I had never seen her leg taped for a match before. And Seika Izawa, being the killer she is, kicked that knee immediately. I think it was the first strike of the fight. And it kind of like kicked her leg out almost. But once Seika got her hands on her, it was over. It was like a buzzsaw. It was just always moving position, always punching, always kicking. And she just overwhelmed her and submitted her with an armbar. I think very highly of Miki Motono. And this was a very impressive, one-sided, dominating victory.
Well, I tell you this, that women's 115 pounds division, strawweight division in Japan, is almost non-existent. It's not many fighters there, right? I mean, who else is there? Like Amy Fujino?
Well, it's kind of funny because it used to be the division, but then everyone cut weight down to 48.
Maybe some girls are on Team Date, you know. So
there's no competition. Only foreign fighters.
So I think this is a girl that needs to start fighting outside of Japan almost immediately now. So I think I'll tell you this. I've already emailed Nick Maynard about her and see if that's even possible. And if it's not, I think I think Shannon Knapp should take a look at her, and I think she should be doing the competitions in outside Japan, more higher competitions. You know.
I will say, so I was part of the post-fight media scrum as well. And I interviewed Seika Izawa before, where she was like, I love Deep Jewels. I want to fight for Deep Jewels. I want to represent Deep Jewels. There's been a tone change. She has changed tone. No longer does she want to fight for Deep Jewels. It's, I want to represent Deep Jewels. I want to
represent Deep Jewels and do well in Invicta or UFC.
That's what she's saying. She wants to go abroad and be successful in other promotions and say that she's kind of like that guy, the people in RIZIN, like, I will show how strong Shuto is by winning in RIZIN. She wants to go abroad and fight and show how strong Deep Jewels is by beating other promotions champions. And
good for her, because she must be already know that I'm interested in her, because I already told Saeki that I'm very interested in Izawa. I want to bring her into the States and blah, blah, blah. So he says he's going to talk to her after this fight against Miki Kono. So we'll see, you know.
I just wanted to say that to you because I'd mentioned to you before that she had been very serious about wanting to stay at Deep Jewels, and now she's completely changed tone, where I think she's already acknowledged the fact there's nothing left for her in Deep Jewels.
Yes.
And it's time to go on, because, I mean, I'm sure that RIZIN would have loved to keep Kanako Murata, but there's no 52 kilo, there's no 115-pound fighters in Japan or Korea. You can't bring them in. You have to bring them in from the United States, and it's just not worth it.
And I heard that she's finishing up her graduate school this year, right?
Yeah, she's a graduate student.
Right. And that's perfect. It's perfect timing for her to go.
Oh, yeah. You know? It's kind of funny, too, because she went to Disneyland the day after the event and with her brother, and she went up to, like, high-five something and was just completely failed. And everyone was making fun of her on Twitter. They're saying, how can this, like, super dominant fighter be this unathletic? It's kind of funny to see the video. And then I think Ryo Chonin actually replied with a video of Ayaka Miura throwing a ball in the most terrible form you've ever seen. So she may not be that athletic with jumping, but she is I think she's a special talent.
I think so too.
Take this into consideration. She made her pro debut in MMA last year, and she's already at this high level.
She could always come to Vegas and join those girls I just mentioned earlier. I mean, that's all straw weights, and she's going to learn a lot training with Kanako and Mizuki and everybody else, right? If Kanako can make it.
Plus, she's young enough now that I think if she starts doing that high-level training now, it'll really take root.
Exactly. That's what I want for fighters. I want them to do it while they're young. You know, when they're like 30.
Because her first fight with Miki last December, she was looking good on the feet, but it was mainly kind of a more measured approach. She looked so much more confident and had so much more faith in her striking abilities in this fight. So I think she's already advancing at a very rapid pace. I think it's important to get her with the right people to train.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I feel kind of, you know, I wouldn't say this. I feel responsible for Japanese MMA. I'm determined to get her out of there, actually. Because if she goes to RIZIN and stuff, nothing against RIZIN, but just because they couldn't come up with the right opponent, they might ask her to fight on a heavier weight class or fight some, you know, in a weird catch weight and stuff. It doesn't worth it, you know. And I've seen fighters not doing well. It's just like how Kanako ended up fighting Rin Nakai in RIZIN, which never made sense to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the best options for her, honestly, would be go to Invicta FC and get a couple fights, then get to the UFC. Because I don't like one FC will lock you down. You don't know what's going to happen. You may never fight again. And I don't think Bellator has any 115 women's division. No. And so I think that kind of limits down to that. But outside of her,
Japanese fans, they tend to forget about Invicta, but by far, besides the UFC, Invicta has the deepest women's MMA.
Plus, they just signed that giant new deal. I mean, they're going to be bigger than ever.
And they're going to increase number of shows to whatever. I know that I can't say it, but, you know, much more than they used to be. So that means more spots for fighters.
Plus, I mean, there's two roads to the UFC when it comes to Japan, and that's through Pancrase or Invicta FC. Those are the two ways that they've shown that you can get into the UFC. And Pancrase doesn't have 52 kilo women right now. So Invicta FC is really the only option.
Right. I mean, you could go to Deep Jewels to RIZIN and stuff like that, but that might take a little detour, right? You know?
Right. But and she's obviously very special. I'm looking forward to seeing what she's going to do. She's young, super talented, and she's hungry. I mean, she's living in a $300 a month apartment. Her laundry machine is outside. So she's doing she's making the sacrifices now. But
exactly, and she deserves it. And I think if she's finished with school, maybe it's not bad to take a year or two off from Japan, right? Just to see what's out there. I can make her active here. I can get her fighting. There's no problem.
Plus, it's full circle. She's close with Kana Watanabe. They spar with each other several times a week. And maybe she'll learn from her and be like, oh, I should go train to the U.S.
I hope so. I really hope so. You know.
But
so at the end, I want to do this one: bi-weekly Miss Rin Nakai update. The reason for that is because you sent me this Twitter. I want to share this with you. It's the Twitter she tweeted back in June 12th that she complained about somebody's blocking her from getting fights, and they're thinking about fighting a lawsuit.
Yeah. Anyone that's been following Rin Nakai's blog knows this isn't the first time she's threatened to file a lawsuit. It isn't the first time she's threatened to get the police involved. I don't know who this mysterious dark force is that's preventing her from getting fights. I have a feeling it's her own management. I also thought
right now, I'm telling this, her management group is actually same guys that manages Horiguchi and Kana Sakura.
That's a recent development, though, right?
That means the managements have to have more leverage than the other management in terms of dealing with the RIZIN, right? Obviously. Right. But not making anything happen, so what's wrong with that, right? What is going on?
Yeah, and I was kind of laughing because I thought it was kind of not a little too soon. After Murata Kanako lost, she kind of replied on the tweet like, UFC, you should bring me in to do the fight.
Yeah, I saw Mr. UFC, like, please bring in, something like that, yeah.
And I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're the last person that Sean Shelby wants to think about signing right now.
Well,
my wife was also like, did you see the tweet where someone gave her Don Quixote money and she used it to buy a bra and sent them a picture?
Yeah, I saw that, like gift certificate money kind of stuff, right? And she used that to buy rice, and she's almost like begging for money and stuff. It's almost sad.
Well, yeah, she talks about how she just go like buy the discount vegetables and meat that's spoiling. And like, you could just fight somebody. You could just fight somebody and get paid.
Yeah, the bottom line is this: with her record and with her resume, if she can't get a fight, then she needs to fire people around her. End of story. It's just end of story. Period. Coach, management, doesn't matter. If she couldn't get a fight this long, there's something wrong.
It looks like she's angling for something because she got the new management. She's constantly tweeting about Rise events, like the kickboxing promotion.
Right.
And she's tweeting about the UFC now. So I think she's trying to do something. And it'll be interesting to see what her management puts together. Now that she has actual management, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, but I'm giving a big, bold prediction right there. Her management is good, legitimate, but I think they're going to have a trouble dealing with her. And I think they're going to get into some kind of trouble, and this manager end up with releasing her. That's what's going to happen, I think.
Yeah. I mean, they'll just get fed up with it.
Yeah, but too bad though. She's one again. She could go to Invicta.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I mean, she's a monster. I mean, her most recent training videos. I mean, her shoulders are bigger than any guy I know. She's absolutely jacked right now.
Right, and, she's huge.
I do want to say before we shut off, back to the Deep Jewels 33. I think the other big winner from the event was Saudi Oshima.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And it's kind of funny because in the atomweight tournament, she was the smallest person in it. She's 4'11". She's absolutely tiny. I mean, she has twins, and they're almost as big as she is. And she's actually the microweight champion. She's the 44 kilo deep champion.
Right.
And then she won. And, I mean, everyone was picking Park to win. And I was always trying to, like, slow them down and say that I know that Park dominated Oshima, but Oshima revealed one thing, and that Park isn't comfortable on the ground.
Yeah.
And that the only reason that she was able to escape is she's so much bigger than Oshima. But Oshima did her best Imanari impression, apparently, acted like she was hurt, went to the ground, and submitted her with an armbar. And I say that because one thing that stuck out to me about going to the Deep Jewels event was that one person came and watched the couple of the Deep Jewels fights, but not the deep fights, and that was Sakaki Bara. So Sakaki Bara came to the Deep Jewel show and left before the Deep show. And Hamasaki was in the ring today, and they said, we're going to look for opponents for you in September. I'm not saying it's going to be Oshima because they're teammates, but he was at Deep Jewels, and you better believe he's looking for someone to fight Hamasaki because he doesn't think he's going to be able to bring any foreigners in. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's Park.
Or I wouldn't be surprised if we gave her Miki Motono a shot. Who knows? We should make it down.
Yeah, it's just I feel like
there's not much choices out there, actually. Really.
Not a choice. And I feel like Park makes sense to me because it's Ham Sohi's friend.
Right.
And you get to like get revenge that way, or build it up, promote it that way. The problem with Miki Matono is she's a stud, she's a super athlete, and not only is she Ayaka's teammate, no one knows who she is. You can't build her up because no one knows who she is. Park, you can't build Park up because people don't know who Park is, but they know who Ham Sohee is. And all you have to do is throw a couple pictures of her with Ham Sohee up on the Titantron and be like, and then just you turn it into, this is Ham Sohee. Like, this isn't Ham Sohee, but this is Ham Sohee. This is a Korean girl who's friends with Ham Sohee. This is Ham Sohee.
Sort of like a sister, right? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
But, no, but here's what it is. Then I could totally see that's happening. But then I really would love to see Hamasaki against Reina. Then,
yeah,
I mean that's the matchup. It's almost worth it for the TV viewers who watch the Fuji television.
Well, I would say that I would almost rather prefer to watch Park fight Reina, and then maybe have. But then you have no one for Hamasaki, so it makes it difficult. But.
Right, but for Reina, right, at this point of her career, she's not going to fight more than 2-3 more times, right? Then. No. If she's going to fight, if she's going to lose, she should just fight against the top girl instead of a mediocre. You know?
Well, I think what you got to do is you got to get to, if you're going to her to fight Hamasaki, you need Reina to come off of like a recent win. And I think if you bring over someone like that and she gets a win, then you can do the Hamasaki fight. But right now, it just seems incredibly random.
Yeah,
and
it is.
The problem with Hamasaki is all these girls with deep jewels that are doing well are her teammates.
Yeah. Or they train together.
Yeah, they'll train with her. So it's just like, that's going to be weird.
I mean, I wouldn't say a problem, but that's the issue about the Japanese women's MMA. Just not many choices of place to train or training partner to train with.
I'll say, I think it's better than it used to be. Because I remember, you'll remember too, like 10 years ago, it honestly seemed like you either trained at AACC or you were the other group. And by other group, I mean you were Emi Fujino and Vivi May, and you all trained together. It was like there was 2 groups of people that trained, and they'd all fought each other like 100 times. So it became this thing. But now, I feel like there's more gyms. I think RIZIN has done a lot for the grassroots side of MMA in Japan, and a lot of gyms are getting more exposure. I mean, Deep Jewels now, 5 years ago, every fighter felt like they're all over 35, and they were 5 and 10. Now, half the fighters are 18, and most of them are under the age of 30.
Yeah, well, I like that, and that's why, I mean, I really wish I could bring in Izawa, Kanako, Kana, everybody to Vegas.
If you did that, you'd be like a super villain. You'd have like your super team of all the best fighters.
With the Brazilian top team kind of thing, right? I mean,
it's called Japan. Yeah. Oh, my God. What they call it? It's like the Black Zillions when they had that thing. You got to like mix Brazilian and Japanese.
Yes. We have to think about some name like that, you know?
Yeah, exactly. That'd be awesome. That'd be... I mean, just to imagine, like, not even the fights, but imagine if you had like some type of YouTube channel, just follow them around. That'd be really entertaining just to see what those 3 were doing in the U.S.
Yeah, we need to invite Miss Rin Nakai then. That's just gonna
that would be nuts.
Dude, that would be really interesting.
Her Twitter feed is so nuts. She like uploaded a picture of some eels today, and she was like, "These are the eels that live behind my gym. They have magical powers. Please do not affect these eels." I'm like, what the hell is going on?
I really wish somebody talked some sense into her head and her husband's head. So she's going to be wasting her career. I mean, she only got, what, like 3-4 years left, I think?
Yeah, I mean, she looks like she's working out, which to me, like, I'm going to be strangely positive and hope that the new management gets something going. Like, just absolutely hope that something happens. Just random thought entered my head. We all know that Rin Nakai could make 52 kilograms. She could make 100.
Definitely. That's the first thing I'll tell her. Yeah.
What if you brought her over to RIZIN? You had her fight Seika Izawa.
Again, there's no. Yeah, that's actually an interesting fight. You know, I think that would be. But again,
that might get the UFC's attention, and you could bypass Invicta FC and just go straight into the UFC.
Could if Seika wins. But at the same time, I feel like Seika is such a good talent that it's not a bad idea to let her go through a pretty good experience in Invicta.
Yeah, that's true.
And that kind of experience will make her a better fighter 3-4 years down the road, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, so let's finish it up. Yeah. All right. So I will put this up on Spotify and everything else in about 24 hours. So everybody can listen to it. So they will be back in 2 weeks with all the other updates, including Ms. Rin Nakai.
Perfect. You have to have the Rin Nakai updates.
I know. All right, so I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Sounds good.
All right, bye-bye.